This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Aaron Mate.
We turn now to the Koch cartel, their reach, their reactionary agenda, and their record. A scathing new look at the Koch family's role in the ultra-conservative John Birch society. The story appears in the new issue of the Progressive magazine, Attack of the Plutocrats, the Robber Barons issue. It zeroes in on Charles Koch's roots with the John Birch Society and how he has since used his wealth to push a similar agenda into the mainstream.
For more, we go to Washington, D.C. We're joined by its author, Lisa Graves, president of the Progressive Inc., which includes the Center for Media and Democracy, also the publisher of the Progressive magazine. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Lisa. Can you lay out what these new revelations are that you have found out?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having us on. And we've been doing research in archives across the country, and what we've discovered is not just that Fred Koch, Charles David Koch's father, was a member of the John Birch Society and, in fact, helped found it. But what we discovered in archives is that Charles Koch himself followed his father's footsteps into the John Birch Society, and that society was a very extreme organization. It was an extreme right-wing organization that spent the 60s largely opposing the civil rights movement here in the United States. And so these documents, some of the documents we're revealing today, talk about are in Charles Koch's own words, funding for the John Birch Society, trying to support its mission. And what we've documented is what that means in context in the civil rights movement, how that organization was trying to stop the civil rights movement, trying to discredit it, opposing the Civil Rights Act of 1964, opposing other progress on integration of our society.
And Lisa Graves, why is this so significant? Obviously, the Koch brothers, billionaires, have a lot of power in this country. But do you see that John Birch legacy still continuing today in the political activities that they fund?
We do. So even though Charles Koch resigned his life membership and stopped advertising in the John Birch Society publications and promoting its radio shows and fundraising for it in 1968, what we think has happened based on our other research is that he's really advanced those ideas. He's learned to use other language than calling people communists. For example, in his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal earlier this year, he used the term collectivists to describe anyone who basically opposes his agenda. In many ways, what Charles Koch has done is put a more sophisticated gloss on the John Birch Society through the organizations that he and his brother have helped fund and fuel, and in fact really proliferated across this country to try to push these ideas into the mainstream. These ideas that anything that is anything other than free market fundamentalism is somehow communist or collectivism.
Lisa Graves, your report features many photos about the Kochs and the John Birch Society that you gathered from public archives in recent months, including one that shows a double billboard they ran in Birmingham, Alabama, in the aftermath of Bull Connor's attacks on protesters.
Yes, one of the shocking documents that we discovered was that the John Birch Society, the bookstore that Charles Koch was hanging out in Wichita and helping to promote, was putting out these pamphlets attacking not just the civil rights movement, but attacking even key photos and moments in civil rights. And so in the John Birch Society, the founder, Robert Welsh, helped promote the idea that the infamous attack on civil rights activists in Birmingham, where activists were bitten by dogs and hosed by fire hoses, that the dog bite photo was a setup, it was a sham. And so after the outcry in the nation over the brutality by Bull Connor in Birmingham, Alabama against civil rights activists and protesters, the John Birch Society started pushing a movement to support your local police. So in addition to calling for the impeachment of Earl Warren, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, in addition to attacking Martin Luther King as a communist, in addition to suggesting that Rosa Parks was a communist and trained by communists, they also promoted in the immediate aftermath of those attacks on protesters a movement to support your local police. Those are the types of materials that were promoted in the 60s and 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, attacking the civil rights movement, in fact, asking what's wrong with civil rights and claiming that basically civil rights in the United States were perfectly fine without federal intervention.
Lisa, your piece details this little-known political operation that the Kochs ran in 1996 called Triad. Can you talk about this?
Sure. So after leaving the John Birch Society and funding a number of other organizations, Charles and David Koch appear to have been involved in an operation called the Triad entity, basically, that was investigated by Congress back before smartphones and Google. And so it's a little bit of obscure history, but in fact it's very revealing, because the Triad operation in Kansas was designed to use shell corporations, shell entities, to run ads to influence the 1996 races, federal races in this country. It was investigated by Congress. There were efforts to subpoena the people involved in Triad. One of the Republicans shut down that investigation, and later it turned out that part of that operation was largely financed by the Koch family fortune. And if you fast forward to just 2012, what you see is that operation on steroids, basically, through the Koch operatives who are running what's known as Freedom Partners, which is another of these entities that basically operates a bunch of shell organizations or fuels shell groups with pop-up names, basically, to transfer cash, big cash. What we and the American people didn't discover until almost a year after the 2012 elections was that the Koch brothers and their billionaire buddies had managed to inject nearly $250 million of money into the election through a group called Freedom Partners that no one outside those operatives knew even existed.